When I went to greet my daughter, who is marrying into a family of well-educated doctors, the father said, "You're a mother and a child. That means you graduated from middle school, right? Are you working as a cleaning lady?" To which I replied, "My daughter is a doctor in the US."
I didn't expect my son to bring a fatherless daughter as his girlfriend. Does that mean she's a middle school graduate? I heard she works at a hospital. Is she a cleaning lady? That's how she sneaked into the hospital. A bottom feeder who would do anything to get close to a doctor. How did you seduce my son?
At his daughter's wedding greeting, his father said one outrageous thing to me. "After my husband's death, I have raised my daughter by myself all my life. I have been trying my best not to be told that this is why fatherless homes are so difficult. I had no right to be told such a thing by someone I had just met." I bit my lip in silence. However, the father's rant did not stop when he was soaked in alcohol.
I don't care what you say, I won't allow you to get married. She is a poor man from a single-parent family. There is no way she can compete with us. I will find a woman who is worthy of our family. We are a family of excellent doctors. It would be a shame for generations to come just to be related to such a bottom feeder. Look, you're wasting your time. Go home, go home.
I couldn't listen any longer. I stood up and told him the truth, my hands trembling with anger. His father's face turned pale. "My name is Olivia. I am 55 years old. My mother, a nurse, did an excellent job raising me. Perhaps it was because I watched her, but I also wanted to become a nurse. I became a nurse, fulfilling my dream, and was working at a hospital affiliated with a national university when I met Lucas, a new doctor. Lucas was a man without the pompous attitude that doctors tend to have. He was a very competent doctor, but he was humble and too kind. We would say, 'Doctor, get a grip,' and we nurses would encourage him. Being close in age, Lucas and I were attracted to each other, and after dating, we got married. A few years later, Lucas left the university hospital to become a practicing physician. Just around that time, I was blessed with a baby. It was a girl, and we named her Sophia. My husband wanted me to take care of the baby, so I devoted myself to raising the child for a while. When Sophia grew up and became less of a handful, I began to help my husband at his clinic. Thanks in part to my husband's gentle, non-pompous personality, the clinic had a good reputation and many patients came to rely on him. I don't know if I should welcome the fact that the doctors were thriving, but my husband told me that they were very busy and short-staffed. So, as a wife and a nurse, I wanted to do my best to support them.
When I grow up, I want to be a doctor like my father.
In elementary school, she thought about what she wanted to be in the future. My daughter Sophia spoke with sparkling eyes. For my part, I was disappointed that she was not a nurse, but Sophia was a daddy's girl, so it was only natural. Like my husband, Sophia was smart, so I knew it wasn't impossible. When Lucas learned of Sophia's dream, he said, "In the future, we can work together." He seemed happy. I was busy, but my days were full of happiness. There is a saying, "All's well that ends well." It is said that when things are going well, there are pitfalls and unexpected places. When Lucas was working at a university hospital, he once had a tumor in his brain and underwent surgery. He seemed to have recovered completely, but after 10 years in practice, he began to feel ill. Although I told him to get checked immediately, my busy husband was reluctant to take a break. As the saying goes, doctors often neglect their own health. He prioritized his patients and did not care about his own health. While he was spending time with his concerns, Lucas suddenly collapsed after a medical examination. We hurriedly called an ambulance to take him to the hospital, but he remained in a coma. Despite wise treatment and desperate prayers, her husband died without regaining consciousness. A beloved husband and the mainstay of the family. We could not help but be stunned at the loss of our father, who had been a goal for our daughter. After the hectic funeral, our home seemed to have lost its light. We had no choice but to close the clinic, but our daughter Sophia was still in junior high school. With the help of a friend, I returned to my former workplace, a university hospital. I know how hard it is to raise a child alone while working. When I used to work there, I had a colleague who was a single mother, and I had heard many stories about her. Fortunately, the hospital made a lot of accommodations for me when I returned from Lucas's suspension. Doctors and nurses who had once been close to Lucas encouraged me.
They said, "Look, you're done here. You can go home today."
But
"It's okay. It's all right. If you don't hurry, Sophia will get mad at you again for being late."
Thank you always. I'm so sorry this was due, in part, to the personality of Lucas before his death. The warm support of the people around me kept me positive. Once I returned to work and became accustomed to the work, I actively took on the night shift, for which I received extra allowance. My life became irregular, and I sometimes lost sleep. It was physically tougher than when I was single, but I was still able to work hard because I wanted to make Sophia's dream come true. Perhaps it was because she saw how hard I was working. Sophia took the initiative to help me with the housework, which was a big help. Sophia always thanked me with a smile. She is a very filial child, even though she is an adolescent with many worries. The warm support of the people around me kept me positive. Sophia has grown up to be a good girl. It had become a routine for me to talk my husband's portrait. When it came time for the entrance examinations, Sophia was accepted into a local public school. With my daughter's ability, she would have been able to get into a more rigorous school. I asked her why she chose a public school when she could have gone to a private school with a higher deviation score. Sophia replied,
"Private schools are too far away, and the school culture doesn't seem to suit me. I can go to a public school in this town with my friends."
It was a vague answer, not unlike Sophia. It must have been around that time that Sophia stopped saying that she wanted to become a doctor. When I asked her what she was going to do after graduating from high school, she didn't say anything. It was during spring break, just before her junior year, that Sophia confided in me.
"I'm thinking of working after I graduate."
"What are you talking about? What about college? What about your dream of becoming a doctor?" she said.
"But it costs a lot of money to be a doctor."
It is true that medical school is much more expensive than regular college. Even as is, we are a single mother family. Maybe they are concerned that we can't afford it. I said, "Don't worry, we have some savings left by your father." He was more than happy when he found out that Sophia wanted to become a doctor. If she gave up on that dream, he would be sad. I don't care if she had other dreams. I would not know what to say to my husband if I made her give up for financial reasons. Parents want their children to follow the path they have chosen. Sophia would probably like to become a doctor. I don't want you to give up. If your father were still alive, I am sure he would say the same. Perhaps my efforts to persuade her had worked. Sophia smiled and said,
"I'll study hard for the exam."
Sophia then spent every waking moment studying hard for the entrance exam. Sophia has always been a goal-oriented girl. Once she got motivated, there was nothing to worry about. A year later, Sophia passed the entrance exam for medical school at a national university with flying colors. Sophia studied diligently at the medical school and obtained her medical license. After graduation, she completed a 2-year internship at her alma mater's university hospital and became a doctor, fulfilling a long-held dream. In the spring of that year, Sophia and I went to visit her father's grave to report her accomplishment. She said,
"Dad, I made it. I become a doctor. I'm sorry I couldn't work with you."
Under the cherry blossoms in full bloom, Sophia spoke to the graveside. "I'm sure your father would have been happy to hear that." Sophia was still in junior high school when Lucas passed away. She lost her father at an impressionable age, and for a while she wondered what would happen to her. But she still worked hard and made her dreams come true. If Lucas were here, I am sure he would be delighted. I looked at Sophia and the grave with deep thoughts in my mind.
"Hey, Mom, now that I'm grown and independent like this, you can walk your life on your own too."
What are you saying all of a sudden? We were having dinner at a family restaurant on the way home from visiting the grave. I was surprised when Sophia said that to me with a mischievous look on her face. Upon graduating from college, Sophia began living on her own. Even though my children were independent, I continued to work. I am blessed with the relationships at my current workplace, including with the director, and I would like to keep working there as long as I am needed. When I said this, Sophia said,
"That's not what I mean."
Sophia shook her head.
"You are still young. What about getting married again? You're with someone, aren't you?"
Don't tease your mother about such things. Sophia's words made me panic. I have a man I'm close to at the hospital, but it's only a professional relationship. I can't believe I'm thinking of a relationship between men and women now. Sophia, now a doctor, seemed to be working hard. She started going abroad, but she contacted me frequently. When she first became a doctor, she said she was sometimes lambasted and abused by patients, and sometimes depressed when she lost a patient because of inadequate treatment. But Sophia's strength is that she does not give in to these difficulties. She says that when times are tough, she remembers her father of a bygone era and cheers herself up. We not only talked about work, but also about the fact that she is dating a man. They were classmates in medical school, and he is also a doctor, and they became close as they discussed their problems with each other during their residency. They are now distant from each other, and their relationship is long distance. Still, from what Sophia told me, the relationship was going well, and it didn't seem far off that they would get married. However, there was one thing that bothered me when I heard that the man she was dating had the surname of Thomas and that his father was a doctor. I was concerned, however, because he had the same last name as a man I knew. It was probably just a coincidence that it was a very disreputable and uncommon last name. I didn't want to put a damper on Sophia's happiness, and tried not to worry about it. After a while, Sophia sent me the joyful news that he had proposed to her. She said that she wanted to have a meeting with the other party's parents. To tell the truth, I had some news I wanted to share with Sophia, but first I wanted to congratulate her on her marriage. Then it was the day of the meeting at a fancy restaurant. Without even saying hello, the bragging by his father began. He said,
"My family has been doctors for generations, but we are not just a few general practitioners. My grandfather, father, and I all graduated from the old S University and have all been professors at university hospitals. My son will follow the same path."
All they talked about was how superior their family was and how high their position in the family was. The mother hardly said a word, but I guessed she was of the same opinion, because she nodded her head. I was amiable at first, but inwardly I was bored. Wealites are busy, even on holidays. When he said that he had come here today because his son insisted, I might have looked a little taken aback. Coincidentally, Thomas and I worked at the same university hospital. When Sophia told me his last name, I didn't think it was Thomas, but it was Thomas who worked at the same hospital. Thomas is a professor of internal medicine, and I am a nurse in the surgical ward. Although we didn't know each other, Thomas' bad reputation was well known among nurses. But I never thought it would go so far. I am very grateful that you took the time to visit me even though you are so busy. I tried to be condescending, but I wonder how well that went over. Then Thomas looked at me carefully, as if he was assessing me, and said,
I heard that your husband was also a doctor. But to die so early, I doubt his ability as a doctor, or rather his lack of self-care. You didn't notice it, and you didn't care enough about him as a wife.
I was offended by his tone of voice. Who the hell does he think he is? Who the hell do you think you are? How dare you be so rude to her? It was Sophia's boyfriend who admonished him. Unlike his father, who had never hidden his condescending attitude from the first meeting, Ethan seemed to be a sincere young man, which helped.
Listen to me, he said. As a parent, I am concerned about whether she is the right person for my son to marry. Marriage is not just about the couple, it's about the whole family.
He is saying something plausible, but he has a thin smile on his face. I could tell from his expression that he was looking down on us completely.
I never thought that the girlfriend my son brought to me was a single mother and child. I heard she works at a hospital, but does she work as a cleaning lady? That's how she sneaks into hospitals. That's the kind of bottom feeder who would do anything to get close to a doctor. How did you seduce my son?
After my husband's death, in raising my daughter on my own, some people supported me while others made fun of me for raising my daughter alone after my husband's death. What if the child turned out to be a troubled teenager? I was once told such a thing to my face. Sophia had tried her best to raise her child without being told that this is why mothers and fathers have to raise their children. She has been trying her best. She doesn't deserve to be made to feel like a liar by someone she has just met.
Dad, would you please shut up for a minute?
Ethan was trying his best to warn his father, but his drunkenness was not letting up.
I don't care what you say, I won't allow you to get married. She is a poor man from a single-parent family. There's no way you can match up to us. I will find a woman of our family's stature. We are a family of excellent doctors. It would be a shame for generations to come just to be related to such a bottom feeder. You're wasting your time. Go home, go home.
With a clatter, it was Sophia who stood up. She was smiling, but her eyes were not smiling. Normally Sophia is quiet and patient. She had been especially so since the death of her father. However, she would become furious if someone made fun of her parents. Maybe she had put up with it because he was his father-in-law. If Sophia were to speak back to him in a strong tone here, it might make things awkward between him and her. Fearing for her safety, I stood up and put my hand on my daughter's shoulder to restrain her. My daughter is a doctor.
You're lying, aren't you, a fatherless, spoiled brat?
Quickly, Ethan added, Dad, she's a better surgeon than I am. She was more dedicated to research than anyone else in order to detect her father's disease at an early stage. And that dedication has brought her to the United States to study advanced treatments. She is a highly respected and outstanding neurosurgeon in the United States. I couldn't help but listen to Ethan's passionate speech. Although he did not share any details with me, I felt proud to know that Sophia had become such an outstanding doctor. The person in question had lost his quiet anger and was embarrassed by his words.
I see, but no matter how admirable her daughter is, people who grew up in a mother-daughter household and such, it's such a different world from ours. Don't you understand? There will come a time when you and her will not understand each other. I'm doing this for your sake.
He was still trying to interject, as if he didn't like me very much, so I signaled to the person I had called ahead of time to come over. I know you've been insistent that I'm a single mother with a child, but I'm getting remarried, so I'm no longer a single mother. Man who entered the room with the hall staff was a little older than me. He said,
Director, why is the director here?
Yes, it was Mr. Mason, the director of the university hospital where I work, who came here. He is also Thomas' boss.
Oh, Mr. Mason.
It's been a long time. Sophia, I've heard so much about you.
Mr. Mason was a senior colleague whom Olivia's late husband had taken care of, and they had been close friends before their marriage. When her husband was still alive, Mr. Mason used to come over to our house and play with young Sophia. He is now the director of the university hospital and a man who has supported Olivia many times in her return to the hospital. When Sophia once asked me if I knew anyone good, he was the first person that came to mind. Mason also lost his wife and has been childless for a long time. He loved Sophia as if she were his own child. Although I had been approached by him for some time, I still could not make up my mind. When Sophia's marriage was finalized, I finally decided to accept it. I had actually planned to meet Sophia and confide in her after the greeting of the other's parents. But depending on the situation, I was going to ask him to come earlier. I had actually planned to wait until after the greeting was over, but since this is the time, I would like to make a report. I'm getting married to Mr. Mason. His father, with his mouth gaping open, and his mother, too, was stunned.
Well, it's a great thing to be relatives with the director. Hey, you think so too, don't you?
Yes, that's right.
I think this is what he meant by switching sides. The next time Ethan sees his parents with their flirtatious smiles on their faces, he has an indescribable expression on his face. So let me say this, I can't be all that happy about it. Ethan is a perfect match for Sophia, but his parents are not right. Parents.
What did you say?
Thomas, in his position as a professor of internal medicine, used all sorts of nefarious means. If a paper he had a subordinate write was excellent, he would submit it under his own name and take credit for it. He would make up stories about the mistakes of colleagues who might be his rivals, and then kick them down. He also indulged in power harassment of young doctors and nurses. I exposed the reputation I had heard for a long time. Bad reputation is something that comes through the network of nurses, even if they belong to different departments. Most unforgivable of all is, you said earlier that you questioned my husband's competence as a doctor.
No, that's more of a figure of speech.
Hearing this, Mr. Mason became angry. Before his death, Lucas was an excellent associate professor at the university hospital and was even considered a candidate for the next professor position. However, he had undergone brain surgery and left the university hospital because of concerns about his health. He was outraged that he could not be allowed to insult him. In front of an angry Mr. Mason, Thomas was disheartened and looked like a frog staring at a snake.
And yet, I'm stunned that you really didn't know what the man his son was marrying was up to.
I told him exactly what I was going to do. Father just didn't want to listen carefully. Apparently, he had a preconceived notion that to a mother and her daughter meant poorly educated and poor, and he did not intend to agree to the marriage from the beginning, but came here to make fun of the other person. Ignoring Thomas, who was trying to defend himself, Ms. Mason turned to Sophia.
Sophia, have you thought about what I sent you in an email?
Until recently, Sophia had been based in the US, but she returned home when she got married. An excellent neurosurgeon, Sophia was being recruited by several hospitals as an excellent draw. However, as the director of the hospital, he would very much like her to return to her alma mater, the university hospital. Eventually, I told her I would like her to succeed me.
That would make a great match.
The other father smiled and flirted with the director, while I wondered when he had approved of the marriage. In contrast, Sophia's face was clouded.
I'm sorry, but I must decline your offer to return to this hospital.
Do you have some reason?
Sophia glared at Thomas, who had just revealed his condescending attitude and had had his say.
My father taught me that a doctor has to be there for everyone, no matter who they are, no matter what position you hold. There is only one life, and illness has nothing to do with nobility. I will never forget the days I spent with my father, and I respect my mother more than anyone else for raising me so well after he passed away. I cannot work in a hospital with a professor who would insult my parents.
Mason nodded deeply.
I see,
he said, looking at Thomas.
His reputation is on me. I swear I'll deal with it in the near future. Sophia, or rather, Dr. Sophia, we need you.
Oh, what are you saying?
You shut up for a minute, Thomas. You will be dealt with shortly.
Thomas looked despairing as he was told this. It seems that Mr. Mason acted promptly on his declaration, and the following month, Thomas was punished. He was given a pay cut, demoted, and sent to a long-term care medical center in a remote area. Although he was treated as a director, it is said that he was given a quiet position with almost no real authority. Perhaps it was because he was so proud of his family of excellent doctors and his position as a professor at a university hospital. Or perhaps his pride did not allow him to do so, but Thomas quit after less than 6 months. Later, Sophia and Ethan were successfully married. Sophia accepted Mr. Mason's invitation and returned to her former university hospital. She said,
"Let's have a ceremony with you and Mr. Mason too."
But I was too old and embarrassed to do so. We have already registered our marriage, but we don't intend to have a big ceremony. After Sophia and her family settled down, I plan to invite only my close friends and family and have a party to show them off. Sophia and Ethan are said to have a reputation as a well-matched couple at the university hospital. As a parent, I am relieved that my daughter has a happy married life. At my age, I too have been blessed with a good spouse. I am now able to live a peaceful and happy life. We should not judge people by the environment in which they have been brought up. I will live on proudly.